A Chinese company sold more pure electric cars last year than Tesla did. Not in one country, not in one strong quarter. Worldwide across a full calendar year for the first time ever. 2.26 million battery electric vehicles against Tesla's roughly 1.64 million. Their cheapest car lists for about $10,000. And here is where this stops being a story about cheap cars, because that $10,000 hatchback ships with a driver assistance system called BYD God's Eye. Cameras, radar, highway navigation, automated parking, the whole package. Rivals in the same market sell equivalent capability as an option costing thousands. BYD priced the entry version at $0 and made it standard across the entire range. That happened in a single evening in February 2025. Then, in May of 2026, they went further. And this is the part that should make any engineer sit up straight. BYD announced that if one of its cars causes an accident while the city driving system is actually driving, BYD pays. Repairs, third-party property damage, injury costs. No upper limit, not an insurance product you buy separately. A liability the manufacturer takes onto its own balance sheet. No Western car maker has done that. Tesla has never done that. So a company most people outside Asia still mispronounce has torn up two pricing rules the car industry treated as permanent, that advanced driver assistance is a profit center, and that the driver carries the risk. Here's the twist, though. That same company just posted its first annual profit decline in 4 years. Its sales inside China fell almost 40% in the first half of 2026. Both of those things are true at the same time, and the reason they are both true is the actual story. If you want the engineering and the economics rather than the headline, hit like and subscribe, because that genuinely helps this channel keep making these. What is coming up is a battery that charges to 70% in 5 minutes. A chip nobody expected BYD to build, 100,000 jobs that quietly disappeared, and a tariff wall that just developed its first crack. Let us get into it. Start with the money, because the free driver assistance announcement is not a marketing story. It is a cost structure story wearing a marketing costume. When BYD put 21 models on sale with God's Eye fitted as standard, it did not just add a feature, it reclassified a feature. For roughly a decade, the entire industry had agreed on something: cameras, radar, and the compute. To fuse them were premium hardware, sold at premium margin on premium cars. Tesla built a software business on that assumption. German brands bundled it into option packs that added $5,000 to $15,000 to a car. The assumption held because nobody had a reason to break it. BYD had a reason. The company's problem in early 2025 was not cost. It was perception. Chinese buyers had started treating driver assistance as the marker of a serious car, and BYD, despite outselling everyone, was seen as the value brand that lagged the software-forward startups. So BYD did what a company with a structural cost advantage does when it wants to change a conversation. It gave the thing away and let everyone else explain why they were still charging. The numbers underneath that decision are worth sitting with. The entry tier, God's Eye C, runs on cameras and radar with no LiDAR and handles highway navigation and parking. That tier is standard. The middle tier, God's Eye B, adds a LiDAR unit and more compute, and it is a paid option. As of May 2026, it costs 12,000 yuan, around $1,700. In the same market, Tesla's equivalent package sells for 64,000 yuan, roughly $9,400, as a one-off with no subscription. Huawei's comparable system sits at 36,000 yuan, so BYD is not giving away everything. It is giving away the floor and pricing the ceiling at roughly a fifth of what Tesla charges. When the announcement landed, shares in Xpeng and Geely fell. That is the market pricing in exactly what happened. By late April 2026, God's Eye in one tier or another was fitted to more than 60 models across BYD's 4 brands, with close to 3 million vehicles equipped. That is the part that matters strategically. Every one of those cars is a data collection node. And the liability guarantee announced in May 2026 is the flywheel BYD had already tried. This with automated parking in July 2025, promising to cover the damage, and usage of the feature jumped from 21% of owners to 93%. People do not use systems they do not trust. Underwrite the trust and usage explodes. Usage generates the driving data that makes the next version better. It is a very deliberate loop. So how does a company afford to hand out hardware and absorb crash liability? It comes down to owning the parts of the car that dominate the bill of materials, and BYD owns an unusual share of them. Analysts commonly put the figure at around 3/4 of key components made in-house, which is not an audited number, but is the right order of magnitude. The battery cells, the power electronics, the motors, the wiring harnesses, the domain controllers. Its parts arm, FinDreams, is the second largest EV battery manufacturer on the planet behind CATL. Its semiconductor arm is the biggest domestic supplier of automotive IGBTs in China, the high-power switches that meter electricity from the pack to the motor. And it has been building them since BYD bought a small chip fab in 2008 for $29 million. That vertical stack is why the company survived the chip shortage intact while Ford and GM idled assembly lines. But it is worth being precise here, because the popular version of this story overstates it. BYD's own fabs handle mature node power semiconductors. The high-performance compute running the driver assistance stack was, until very recently, bought from outside suppliers like NVIDIA and Horizon Robotics. That changed in May 2026 when BYD unveiled the Xuanji A3, a 4-nanometer driving chip it describes as its 567th automotive-grade chip and China's first at that node. 3 of them stacked together deliver over 2,100 TOPS. BYD says it is already in mass production and that the chip R&D headcount is above 7,000 people. What BYD has not disclosed is who actually fabricates it. 4-nanometer production is not something BYD does in-house, and the industry assumption is an advanced foundry. So the accurate framing is BYD designs its own driving silicon now and manufactures its own power silicon. Those are different claims, and the difference matters. The battery is where the compounding really shows. The original Blade battery, launched in 2020, was a packaging idea more than a chemistry idea. Conventional packs stack cells into modules, then modules into a pack. Think of loading bottles into crates and then crates into a truck. Every layer of casing is weight and volume doing no useful work. Blade skipped the crates. Long, thin lithium iron phosphate cells slot straight into the pack floor as structural members. Less dead weight, fewer failure points, and a cell geometry that dumps heat sideways rather than concentrating it, which is why it passed the nail penetration test that had embarrassed other formats. In March 2026, BYD replaced it. The second-generation Blade moves from lithium iron phosphate to lithium manganese iron phosphate, which lifts the cell voltage platform from around 3.2 volts to 3.8. That single change is what unlocks the headline 10 to 70% state of charge in 5 minutes, 10 to 97% in 9. At minus 30 degrees Celsius, 20 to 97% takes 12 minutes, only 3 minutes longer than at room temperature, which addresses the single loudest complaint about EVs in northern China. BYD's own claim on energy density is modest, a bit over 5% at cell level, though the long format variant is quoted much higher, and the two figures describe different things. BYD now offers a lifetime warranty on the cells. The charging side is simpler physics than people assume, and harder engineering than people assume. Power equals voltage times current. Push 1,000 volts and 1,000 amps, and you get a megawatt. BYD launched that in March 2025, alongside the Han L and Tang L, 400 kilometers of range in 5 minutes, 2 kilometers of range per second. In March 2026, the second-generation charger went to 1,500 volts worth of headroom and 1,500 amps, hitting 1.5 megawatts per gun. For scale, Tesla's V4 dispensers top out around 500 kilowatts. The hard part was never the car, it is the grid. You cannot casually pull a megawatt and a half out of a suburban distribution transformer every time somebody plugs in. So each BYD flash charging stall carries its own energy storage buffer, charging slowly from the grid and discharging fast into the vehicle, with liquid-cooled cables carrying 2 kilograms of copper and coolant, because 1,500 amps through a handheld connector generates serious heat. The whole unit is designed as a station inside a station, dropped into existing sites. BYD says installing one is about as involved as fitting an air conditioner. That is a deployment claim as much as an engineering one, and the deployment numbers back it. 4,239 stations in early March 2026, more than 7,000 across 325 cities by early July, against a target of 20,000 by year-end. Now the receipts, because this channel does not run on claims. In 2025, BYD sold 4.6 million new energy vehicles, of which 2.26 million were pure electric, and took the global EV crown from Tesla for a full year. Revenue crossed 800 billion yuan for the first time, about $816 billion. Research and development spending hit 63.4 billion yuan, roughly $9.2 billion, which was nearly double the company's net profit for the year. That is not a rounding item. That is a company deliberately spending its earnings on the next generation rather than reporting them. On the extreme end of the range, the Yangwang U9 Extreme recorded 496.22 kilometers per hour at the ATP Papenburg Oval in Germany in September 2025, taking the outright production car speed record from the Bugatti Chiron Supersport. It runs a 1200-volt architecture, 4 motors at 555 kilowatts each, and it went round the Nürburgring in 6 minutes 59, the first pure electric production car under 7 minutes. 2 honest caveats. That was a one-way peak run, not the 2-way average older records used. And Guinness has had its production car speed title in abeyance since 2022. It is still an extraordinary engineering result. Only 30 will be built. And at the other end of the range, in July 2026, BYD launched the Rako in Japan, a purpose-built electric K-car, the first ever built by a company from outside Japan for a segment that is roughly 40% of Japanese new car sales. 320 kilometers of range, sliding rear doors, and a sticker price below every domestic rival. That is the same company, in the same year, building the fastest production car on Earth and a box on wheels for Japanese backstreets. Now the part the enthusiast coverage skips, and where this gets genuinely interesting, BYD is in trouble at home, and the trouble is instructive. On the 1st of January 2026, China halved its new energy vehicle purchase tax exemption. The maximum waiver dropped from 30,000 yuan to 15,000. Demand that would have arrived in the first quarter of 2026 got pulled forward into the fourth quarter of 2025, and then the market fell off a cliff. BYD's domestic sales in the first half of 2026 came in at just over 1 million units, down 39.5% year on year. February domestic volume collapsed 65% and, for the first time on record, came in below the company's exports. First quarter net profit fell 55% to 4.08 billion yuan, the weakest in more than 3 years. For the full year 2025, net profit fell 19% to 32.62 billion yuan, the first annual decline since 2021, with gross margin at a 5-year low. The price war did that, and China's regulators have decided it has gone too far. When BYD cut prices across more than 20 models in May 2025, the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology publicly committed to curbing what Chinese officials call involution-style competition, meaning destructive rivalry that shreds margins across an entire sector. Then came the mechanism that actually bit. Chinese car makers had been financing themselves by stretching supplier payments for months, effectively turning their parts makers into unsecured lenders. New rules effective. June 20 to 25 capped that at 60 days. BYD had been averaging 127 days in 2024 by one dataset. Cutting that to 60 is a very large permanent hit to working capital, and it removes a form of free financing that funded years of expansion. Two more numbers belong in an honest account. BYD received 12.47 billion yuan in government subsidies in 2025, equivalent to 38% of its net profit that year. And in 2025, the company cut nearly 100,000 jobs, taking headcount from roughly 969,000 to about 870,000. That was not falling demand. Sales went up. It was industrial robots displacing assembly line workers, and it fell disproportionately on the lowest paid production roles. The word free deserves scrutiny too. God's Eye C is standard, God's Eye B is not, and on the 1st of May 2026, BYD raised its price from 9,900 yuan to 12,000, blaming a surge in global memory chip costs. The liability guarantee is real but narrow. China only, 1 year, only the urban navigate on autopilot function, not adaptive cruise, not highway navigation, and only if you have completed the in-app training and assessment first. Under Chinese law, these remain level 2 systems, where the human is the responsible driver, and that regulatory line got drawn in blood. In March 2025, 3 people died in a Xiaomi SU7 that hit a barrier at 97 kilometers per hour seconds after the driver took over from the assistance system. Within weeks, the ministry banned the industry from using terms like self-driving, autonomous driving, and smart driving in marketing, mandated level-based labeling, and prohibited unsupervised functions entirely. And that $10,000 price? It is a Chinese domestic price. The same car sells in Europe as the Dolphin Surf, from about 18,600 pounds in the UK and 23,000 euros on the continent. Shipping, homologation, tariffs, and dealer margin roughly double it, which brings us to the walls, because this is now the central question in the global auto industry. In the United States, BYD faces a 100% Section 301 tariff on top of the base rate, but the tariff is not the real barrier. The Commerce Department's connected vehicle rule bans Chinese-developed software from internet-connected cars starting with the 2027 model year, with connectivity hardware following later. You can engineer around a tariff by building a factory somewhere else. You cannot engineer around a rule that bans your code. That is why BYD shelved its planned Mexican plant indefinitely in July 2025, citing geopolitical uncertainty, and why Mexico then raised its own tariff on Chinese-built light vehicles from 20% to 50% on the 1st of January 2026. Chinese car imports into Mexico fell 45% by value in the first month. Europe is a different shape. The EU's countervailing duty on BYD is 17%, on top of the standard 10% import duty for a combined 27%. Note that the 35.3% figure you see quoted belongs to SAIC, not BYD. The answer to a 27% wall is to build inside it, and BYD is trying, but the timeline is a lesson in itself. The Szeged plant in Hungary was supposed to be producing by the end of 2025, started trial production in January 2026, and as of June 2026, the company was saying assembly begins in the fourth quarter, roughly a year late. Turkey is on hold with no timeline. A company that can stand up a factory in China in 18 months is discovering that Europe runs on different clocks. Meanwhile, the sales are arriving anyway. In the first half of 2026, BYD registered 174,000 vehicles across the EU, EFTA, and the UK against Tesla's 170,000, with both on 2.4% market share. A year earlier, BYD trailed Tesla by about 39,000 units. Brazil shows the other cost of moving fast. The Camaçari plant sits on a site Ford abandoned in 2021. A $1 billion investment aimed at 300,000 vehicles a year. In December 2024, Brazilian inspectors removed 163 Chinese workers from the construction site in what they described as conditions analogous to slavery, with passports locked in a cabinet and 7-day working weeks. Prosecutors sued for around $50 million. In April 2026, Brazil's labor ministry added BYD to its National Forced Labor Registry, which restricts access to state bank financing. A court injunction removed the listing within 3 days, and the senior inspector who authorized it was dismissed. Whatever you conclude about that sequence, it is part of the record of how this factory got built. Then there is the one wall that came down. In January 2026, Canada agreed to cut its tariff on Chinese EVs from over 100% to 6.1% for an annual quota of 49,000 vehicles, rising to 70,000 by 2030, with half reserved for cars priced under 35,000 Canadian dollars. Permits started being issued on the 1st of March. In exchange, China cut its tariffs on Canadian canola and seafood. Washington's response was to threaten a 100% tariff on Canadian goods. That is what the next decade of this looks like. Not a fixed wall, but a negotiation where car access gets traded against agricultural access. And here is the comparison that should focus the mind for anyone in Detroit. BYD's bad year, its worst in 4, was a net profit of $4.7 billion. Ford's 2025 was a net loss of $8.2 billion, with the Model E division losing $4.8 billion on its own and roughly $19.5 billion in special items announced as the company retreated from big electric vehicles toward hybrids. F-150 Lightning production ended. GM finished 2025 with $2.7 billion in net income overall, but took a $7.2 billion charge in the fourth quarter, unwinding its EV plans. So the framing that BYD is winning while Western firms struggle is not quite right. The accurate framing is that BYD is having a difficult year inside a business that makes money, while two of the most capable manufacturers in history are having difficult years inside businesses that do not. So what is the actual takeaway? Stripped of the noise. BYD's advantage is not the blade battery or God's eye or megawatt charging. Those are outputs. The advantage is that BYD owns the cost curve on the components that dominate an electric car's bill of materials, and it has consistently chosen to spend that advantage on price rather than on margin. Free driver assistance, uncapped crash liability, a lifetime cell warranty, each of those is margin being converted into market share. That works brilliantly while you have margin to convert, which is exactly why the 2026 numbers matter more than the 2025 headlines. Domestic demand fell, subsidies shrank, regulators closed the supplier financing loophole, and the company's answer was to push exports from 23% to over 43% of volume, because a car sold in Sao Paulo or Munich earns considerably more than the same car sold in Chengdu. The strategy has a floor. This is the year we find out where it is. If this changed how you think about the cars showing up in your market, drop a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so the next one finds you. And I want to hear from you in the comments. BYD is now taking uncapped financial liability for accidents its city driving system causes, something no Western manufacturer will touch. Is that the most confident engineering statement in the industry right now, or the most expensive marketing promise anyone has ever made? Tell me which and why.